Most founders think freedom means I don't have to work anymore. Listen as I talk to a founder who built a 500-person agency and says, not working is not freedom.
The majority of entrepreneurs that I know, including myself, the reason that we've been successful for an extended period of time is because of that purpose that we have. And ultimately, with that purpose, then there becomes a sense of freedom, but that freedom is, I don't think, what most people think it is.
Today, we're sitting down with David Regn, CEO and co-founder of Stream Companies. David talks about what actually changes between the early grind and real scale, why the first million is the hardest, and why freedom isn't sitting at the beach.
I think very few people want to retire and sit on a beach every day. That's not really that fulfilling. It gets boring and all of those things. So freedom for me is really being able to continue doing what I do every day, but to be able to evolve.
Hey everybody, welcome again to From Grind to Gold. Welcome, David. How are you doing today?
Good, Tony. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Tell me about Stream Companies and when you started and kind of what that path has looked like for you.
Tony started Stream Companies in 1996 with my business partner, Jason Brennan, in my mom's living room while we were both still in college. Now we have over 500 team members and have had 29 years of consecutive growth.
What was the thing that you guys had in mind when you started it? Was it like, hey, we think we can make money out of this, or hey, we want to have our own thing, or what? Can you remember back, like what was the genesis of all that?
Oh
Where did
yeah,
you come
no,
from?
I think one, both Jason and I had internships for bigger companies during college, and just realized that I wanted to be an entrepreneur just through that experience, and then my previous 5 years I spent working in high school at a supermarket chain. So I just wanted to have that freedom. And really success was on my back, whether we were going to make it or not. So that was really what it was about. And both, Jason and I just had a love for business, and a love for understanding and curiosity around how to grow a business. So, we chose the marketing, and advertising path as a way for us to help local business owners grow their business.
Yeah, we talk a little bit about freedom, and there's kind of four elements to that. There's money, there's time, there's relationships, meaning you get to work with who you want when you want, and then there's purpose. It's what gets you up in the morning on the hard days when you're kind of doing it. Because let's face it, sometimes money loses its after a while. Once you have it, money loses its kind of luster, or at least it did for me. Talk to me a little bit about freedom of where you're at.
Yeah, Tony, and I think for me personally, first off, my purpose is being able to work with amazing clients and amazing team members at Stream, and I think that fuels my soul, along with then being able to help and mentor, team members within inside Stream and other agency owners. So that's really what fuels me. But I think when we think about freedom, I think a lot of times freedom is misunderstood. That freedom, a lot of times I think people think freedom is lying on the beach, or not having to get up and go to work. And I think that's really misunderstood, because the majority of entrepreneurs that I know, including myself, the reason that we've been successful for an extended period of time is because of that purpose that we have. And ultimately, with that purpose, then there becomes a sense of freedom, but that freedom is, I don't think, what most people think it is.
Think it is.
Yeah. And the freedom is like, ultimately, some people do, but I think very few people want to retire and sit on a beach every day. That's not really that fulfilling, and it gets boring and all of those things. So freedom for me is really being able to continue doing what I do every day, but to be able to evolve. So the what I do today to drive Stream and continue to grow Stream is not what I did 30 years ago or 25 years ago or 20 years ago. Yes, there's the same framework of healthy habits and getting shit done, and that mentality hasn't changed, but the role has changed because the company has grown, the clients have become larger and more complex, and obviously technology, it continues to change and evolve now at the most rapid pace, since the days of the internet. So for me, freedom means that I get to evolve and change and learn and grow every day, with the business, with the clients, with the new challenges, and that really is what feeds me and what I love to do. So if you really think about freedom from an entrepreneurial standpoint, especially founder CEOs that continue to lead their businesses for an extended period of time, it's really about that continuous drive of a growth mindset and constant evolution to make the business the best that it can be, and you're going to face those technological shifts and challenges, that things you weren't even thinking about. So that's really what I find fulfills my soul.
Is the picture you have in your mind now about freedom the same that you had when you're at like 1 or 2 million with your agency?
No, I think that twofold. And it's a great question. And I think it's very, when you say did you have this mindset or framework of, what it looks like. And I think what I did have, Tony, in those early years, I would especially say leading up to 30 years old. So, the first 8 to 10 years of the business was very specific goals of, you know, this much revenue, this many employees, this much profit, right? Which drove me. And like, hey, move into a single family home with my wife, be able to take 2 vacations a year, like very much call it 10 goals. Um,
Yeah.
and that was a composition of professional and personal. So it was a lot about driving to those goals. But what I think has always been in part of my DNA is a lot of curiosity, a lot of growth, this growth mindset. So I think as I, matured and learned more about myself and the actions that I took every day, I began to understand that it's really the growth that drives me. And my business partner and I were always asked this question a lot of like, what's your plan? And the way that I always described it was, I'm climbing to the top of the mountain. I just don't know where the top is yet. And that's really the journey that I've always been on, and I continue to climb
Yeah.
every day, even if, you fall backwards a little bit or the rope slip or whatever happens. I'm on that mountain and I'm climbing, and I guess at some point, you know, I'll maybe reach the top or I'll never reach the top. So will I ever be completely fulfilled? I don't know, but I think the true enjoyment is climbing the mountain. It's the journey. It's not the destination.
Well, yeah, fulfillment has this connotation of like there's an end. And I don't think so. I think it's this continuous thing of fulfillment that you have to work for. It's kind of like happiness a little bit. Like you don't get to a place, oh, I'm happy, and then it's all over,
Yeah.
right? And you know this, like a lot of successful business owners know this, that quote unquote success, uh, when you have achievement and you get to a place, it lasts like 3 seconds, maybe 10. You know, it's really strange, and I try to tell people this, um, you have to take stock of what you've accomplished over the years. We talk, so we've got this thing, creative creatures, and it was born out of the idea that at some point you have to be not creative like art, you know, or graphic design or website, not that kind of creative. Creative in the way that you approach solving problems, using your imagination to solve the problems that you have, because most of us get like, oh, you know, go go do this, go do that. We get all these emails, we get peer groups, we get coaches, we get consultants, and you have to really unlock yourself. So we in the way that you want to do it, because all those things work. Coaches work, consultants work, peer groups work. But first and foremost, this is why we built the 5 archetypes, agency owner archetypes, because we call it the mirror and the map. Look in the mirror first before you map out what's next. Because sometimes, and I want to get your opinion on this or your thoughts on this, but sometimes what I found is that we go in these loops, right? Our personality, our archetype, uh, the thing that drives us and makes us good, we're really iterative. So, like, I'm the firefighter founder. One of the things about me that am is I run into the fire. When there's chaos, I'm my best. I'm at my best. And that works great for some situations, but not a lot of other situations where you're trying to build a team and that team needs to fight their own fires. And I can't rescue everybody. And by the way, my personality style gets burnt out, you know, and then I regret going in and, you know, putting out fires, but I actually kind of create that environment for myself. So that's just a little insight. And so I where I started to grow is where it's like, Tony, you don't have to do the work anymore, but you do have to architect the work, and you have to find the right people, the right leaders that really know their stuff and what it means to lead and manage. And that was like the big epiphany for me, getting around the right people. So first, when you think about that story I just told you, did you go through any of that kind of self-learning of
Oh,
yourself? Like, "Oh,
no, for
man, if I have
sure.
to
I
do
I
this,"
I
like,
I think you have to, and especially, you know, for the most part, when you're a founder, you're doing the majority of the work, right? Like you're doing the selling, you're doing the onboarding, you're doing the client service, you're doing the strategy, and maybe you've got some freelancers or a couple employees doing the execution, but ultimately you're responsible from everything in between, bringing on the client to keeping the client, every month. So I think that as you continue to grow, um, you then get to that, kind of fork in the road of what is the first hire you make, or second hire, or third hire, whatever that is. And the way that I think about it is, one, it's, you know, what are the things that you're not, that you can hire someone that's better than you at that particular function, whether that's a freelancer or a full-time employee. And also, is that something that maybe you're not good at? You don't get any fulfillment, or you don't, want to get up and do any of that work. That's the place that you really want to start, of saying, hey, how do I take things off my plate that I don't love? But that doesn't mean
yeah,
you forget about them, right? You still have to again manage that entire client life cycle, and making sure that you keep that client. So I think, as you go through those things, Tony, like you said, and certainly I've learned on my journey, what you think you might love or what you think you might be really good at might not align with the truth. So you do have to consistently, look in the mirror and truly ask yourself, is this what I'm best at? Um, and
yeah,
and can I hire or afford someone that's to do this, and they're going to be better than me, or they're going to complement me, so then we can continue, to grow the business. So I think that's, can be a difficult first couple steps in an entrepreneur and agency owner's journey.
hey, thank you for watching today's video. Wanted to take a little break here and ask you something. If you are a marketing agency owner and you're feeling successful about what you're doing in your agency, you're making money, things are going well, but you feel a little bit trapped and you're kind of searching for that next thing, that next big thing to solve, I just encourage you to stop for a second. And before you decide what to do next, learn your agency owner archetype. It's free. It teaches you about your personality and your identity and why your identity keeps you in a loop of making the same move over and over again, and makes it so that you and your agency are kind of stuck in the same place. Anyway, it's a great report. It only takes a few minutes to fill out. Get your agency owner archetype today, and thanks for watching. Let's fast forward a little bit. Can you think back when you were like between, when you crossed the 2 million in annual revenue into 3 and 4 million in that stage of your agency? Do you remember back then? What were some of the things you guys were dealing with? What were some of the barriers you guys were breaking through? And you had a partners too, so that's a little bit different than doing it all on your own, right? So maybe also say, well, what did your partner do, and what barriers did you guys break through? Because it's nice to have a partner to lean on sometimes, right?
Yeah, no, I think it's um first off, I think, being a founder, being a CEO is very can be very lonely. And, having a partner to be able to, share the good and share the bad with, and think through the strategies and all those things is very valuable. Um but I think is, when we crossed over, the couple million, I mean, it started to be different, and I'm guessing, at that time we were probably, eight to 10 people, somewhere around there. So, my business partner and I were still doing the majority of the new business, right? And the client services, really, um, back then I say, in the, you know, 1998, 1999, 2000, um, we were bringing on graphic designers, copywriter, creative types to do the work that we weren't necessarily good at. I mean, neither one of us, neither him or I are, a designer by trade. I mean, I think we were, learned to be copywriters and conceptual idea people as the business grew. But again, a lot of it was, you got to go out there and get the business. You got to sell the strategy, and then you got to make sure the deliverables are there. So, as we
Yeah.
were crossing that, you know, those periods, we added that support staff, and then once we kind of say, we're successful at that 2 to 3 million, that next phase was, okay, how do we accelerate, the new business engine, and how
Yeah.
do we rely on creating systems around what we were doing to bring on new business that we could add others to do the same.
How long did it take you, do you think, to go from, let's say, 2 million to 5 million?
Yeah, and Tony, I think it's different, right, for everyone. I don't think there is any, one path, right? Because you can land a big client, and, next thing you know, you're good, right? And you're growing. But I do think that if you look at it, um I would say, like you said, that first million is the hardest. So, let's just say, Jason and I loosely founded, the company in 96, and we didn't get to that $1 million until 2002. But
Yeah.
then from 2002 to 2003, we went from 1 million to 2 million, and then we went from 2 million to 3.5 million, uh, you know, um,
Yeah.
so, it was pretty rapid. After, I mean, again, we doubled, right? In 2001, we went from, you know 469 to, just under a million in 2020. So it was 100% growth. So, you
Right.
look at it, you're right. It takes time, but in our case, once that snowball was rolling down the hill, it compounded, pretty quickly. And I think something, just to put it in perspective, I think for a lot of entrepreneurs who, aspire to, hey, how do I get my company name on the Inc. 5000 list? I think we're only one of two companies that we made the Inc. 5000 list 18 times. So if that
Oh,
puts
wow.
growth into
Yeah.
perspective, it's it's not easy. But like you said, once we got rolling and got over that $1 million hump, it started to grow pretty quickly.
And remind me, Inc. 5000, you have to be at least 2 million and grow at least 25%. Is that year
Yes.
over year?
Yeah.
I think there are a lot of agency owners out there. I want to say, depending on, uh, who you listen to or what numbers you use, it's anywhere from 20 to 40,000. Some people I've even heard more agencies in the world. But there's a lot of them are stuck kind of between a million and 3 million annual revenue. And I always like to say those are the ones that are on the treadmill, right? Trying to figure out, and it's why there's good coaches. It's why there's, good consultants. You hire a good, like, fractional COO or an integrator if you're into the entrepreneurial operating system. Do you remember when you and your partner said, "Hey, we need to hire somebody that leads this piece of our business or that piece of our business"? And how did that evolve?
Yeah, I think that, the key thing for us in particular, why we were able to continue to grow without, bringing in outside capital was by we had the 50/50 rule. That Jason and I lived by for uh basically up until, we did our first private equity deal where whatever the business made, we kept 50%, meaning we kept 50%, he got 25, I got 25, and we reinvested the other 50% back into the business. So there was a constant reinvestment into our business, whether that was for people or whether that was for technology or working capital, to carry, the float of bringing on bigger clients and those types of things. So I think that understanding, what you truly need to, live on versus what you need to grow the business. And I think you said this, and you said a lot of founders are on the treadmill, and you are so right. I mean, I coach and mentor a founder who's super, super successful. Um, and he's built a beautiful lifestyle business. Now, if he chooses to exit, I think his business is at a point where, um, you know, it's on the high side of transacting to a owner operator, and it's
Mhm.
nowhere near ready for private equity, right? So
Yeah.
I think that it goes back to, you know, agency founders and owners and operators ultimately need to ask themselves, what is their goal? Like, do they want to build a lifestyle agency where they have freedom, and freedom in the sense of come and go as you please, don't answer to any KPIs. If you make 100 grand this month, you're good. If you make 75 the next month, you're not yelling at yourself. So I think that, that's really a lifestyle business, not a business. If you want to exit for a premium multiple, that's not going to get it done. So I think it really comes down to what, as an owner, are you looking to accomplish? And if you truly understand what you're looking to accomplish, I think it helps you, really lay out the model that's going to work best for you. But if you're trying to, you know, build a business and you're eating up all the profit and you're not reinvesting it, there's a potential recipe for disaster that you're, gonna get, sideswiped by the competition, and you don't have a business development staff, if, you're not able to, add back lost clients, et cetera. So, it's really, I think important to understand who you want to be and who you want the agency to be.
I'm gonna end on that because that's a really key thing. Who you wanna be and who you want the agency to be. So I always talk about how separating the 2. If you think the 2 are the same, which happens and is a normal process sometimes where you're like you are the agency, until you can separate those 2 things, you can't look at that agency as an asset or a vehicle that you leverage to find that freedom. And it's a little bit of a, splitting of the mind, but once you do it, you can't unsee it, right?
Totally.
Um, I always tell people, look, your agency is like another person that makes money, spends money, has to save money, and is worth something. Any parting, advice or words of wisdom you want all those agency owners out there to remember?
Yes, it's a tough business. And I don't think if you have the intestinal fortitude and mindset to realize that it's a tough business, and you want to deal with, you mentioned firefighting, like that's table stakes, right? That's 75% of your days are going to be some type of firefighting, whether it's a client issue, a deadline issue, you know, missed trafficking or uploading, or an ad wasn't running, whatever it might be. That's the agency business, no matter how good you are. And I think if you are not comfortable with being uncomfortable, knowing that all these things are going to happen, and you don't have that mindset for that, then it's probably not the long term space for you. Uh, and if you don't love it, I think you'll get burned out.
Great conversation, David. I really want to have another or 2 or 3 maybe on different elements. We could really drill down on some things, but I really appreciate you spending some time with me today.
Thanks, Tony. Anytime.